The phone rang at exactly 3:17 a.m. in Mar-a-Lago. What Benjamin Netanyahu whispered to Donald Trump in that moment would either save Israel or destroy their alliance forever. But the real shock, Trump's response wasn't what anyone expected. Hold that thought, because 6 hours before this call, something happened in Jerusalem that nobody saw coming. Picture this. Netanyahu sitting in his private study, surrounded by classified documents, his hands trembling as he dialed the number he'd memorized by heart. The most powerful man in the Middle East, reduced to making desperate calls in the dead of night. But here's what you don't know yet. This wasn't just about politics. This was personal. And what Trump discovered during that call would haunt him for years. But wait, let me take you back to where this all began. 6 hours earlier, 9:17 p.m. Jerusalem time. Netanyahu was in his bedroom supposedly sleeping, when his most trusted aide burst through the door without knocking. The look on Yoav Gallant's face said everything. This wasn't a normal security briefing. This was the kind of crisis that could end governments, destroy legacies, and reshape the entire Middle East. "Prime Minister," Gallant whispered, his voice barely audible, "we have a situation." The document in Gallant's hands was marked with the highest classification level Israel had. What was written inside would make Netanyahu's blood run cold. But more importantly, it would force him to make a choice that taunt against everything he'd built his career on. The irony, the very document that threatened to destroy him also contained the key to his survival. But using it would mean betraying someone who considered him family. Netanyahu's eyes scanned the page once, twice, 3 times. Each read made the situation more impossible. The intelligence was ironclad. There was no room for doubt, no space for hope, no time for alternatives. He had exactly 6 hours before the information would leak to the international media. 6 hours to decide between saving his country or saving his friendship with the most powerful man on earth. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. The document wasn't just about Israel. Hidden in paragraph 7, subsection C, was information that could end Trump's political career permanently. Information that Netanyahu had been sitting on for 2 years, waiting for the right moment. Was this that moment, or was this the moment that would destroy both men forever? Netanyahu walked to his window, looking out at the Jerusalem skyline. Somewhere in the darkness, journalists were already working on stories that would break in the morning. Somewhere in Washington, Trump was sleeping peacefully, unaware that his oldest Middle Eastern ally was about to make the most difficult decision of his political life. The Prime Minister's phone buzzed, a text message from an unlisted number. "Bibi, we know you have it. You have until sunrise." The blackmail had begun. But wait, there's something else you need to understand about Netanyahu's relationship with Trump. Something the media never reported, something that made this midnight call even more devastating. 3 years earlier, during a private dinner at the White House, Trump had shared something with Netanyahu that no other world leader knew. A secret so personal, so damaging, that it could destroy not just Trump's cinches, but his entire family legacy. Netanyahu had promised to take that secret to his grave. He'd given his word, not as a politician, but as a friend. Now, staring at the document in his hands, Netanyahu realized that keeping Trump's secret might mean sacrificing Israel's security. But revealing it, that would mean betraying the only American president who had ever truly understood Israel's position. The clock on his desk showed 11:43 p.m. Less than 4 hours until the deadline, less than 4 hours to decide between loyalty and survival. Netanyahu's wife Sarah entered the room quietly. She'd been married to him long enough to recognize the look on his face, the same expression he'd worn during the Yom Kippur War, during the Gulf War, during every moment when the weight of an entire nation rested on his shoulders. "What is it this time?" she asked, though she already knew she wouldn't get a complete answer. "Everything we've worked for," Netanyahu replied, not looking away from the window, "might end tonight." Sarah moved to stand beside him. "Then fight for it. The cost might be too high." The cost of not fighting is always higher. But here's what Sarah didn't know, what nobody knew except Netanyahu himself. The decision he was about to make wouldn't just affect Israel or America. It would trigger a chain of events that would reshape alliances across the globe, end friendships that had lasted decades, and create new enemies in places where they'd once had only friends. The Prime Minister walked to his secure phone. The red one. The direct line to the American president that bypassed all normal diplomatic channels. His finger hovered over the speed dial. Once he made this call, there would be no going back. The relationship between Israel and America would never be the same. But first, he needed to test something. He needed to know if Trump had already learned about the document through his own intelligence channels. Because if Trump already knew, then this call would take on an entirely different meaning. Netanyahu dialed a different number first. His contact at the CIA, someone who owed him more favors than he could count. The conversation lasted exactly 90 seconds. When he hung up, his face had gone pale. Trump didn't know yet, but he would, within the hour. The Prime Minister had two choices: call Trump and warn him, potentially saving their friendship, but compromising Israel's position, or wait for Trump to discover the truth on his own, preserving Israel's options, but destroying any chance of maintaining their personal bond. But here's the detail that changes everything. Hidden in Netanyahu's safe was another document, one that Trump had given him personally, 2 years ago. During a moment of complete vulnerability, Trump had looked him in the eye and said, "Bibi, this ever comes out, I'm finished. Not just politically, personally. My family will never recover." Netanyahu had accepted that document, that trust, that burden. Now he held two secrets that could destroy two different men. The question was, which secret would he use to save himself? At 2:47 a.m., Netanyahu made his choice. He picked up the red phone and dialed Trump's private number. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th ring, a groggy voice answered. "Bibi, what the hell time is it?" "Donald, I need you to listen to me very carefully. What I'm about to tell you will change everything between us. But I need you to know that whatever happens next, this call comes from a place of respect, not manipulation." There was silence on the other end. Trump was waking up, his political instincts kicking in. This wasn't a normal call between allies. This was something else entirely. "Talk to me," Trump said, his voice suddenly sharp, alert. Netanyahu took a deep breath. "6 hours ago, I received intelligence that compromises both of us. In 30 minutes I have to make a decision that will either save us both or destroy us both. I'm calling because I need you to know that whatever I choose, it's not personal." "What kind of intelligence?" "The kind that ends presidencies." Another silence. Longer this time. When Trump spoke again, his voice was different. Colder. "Are you threatening me, Bibi?" "I'm warning you. There's a difference." "What do you want?" And this is where the conversation took a turn that nobody, not the CIA, not Mossad, not the most experienced diplomats in either country, could have predicted. "I want you to make the choice for me," Netanyahu said. "I want you to tell me whether to use what I know about you, or let them use what they know about me." Trump was quiet for so long that Netanyahu wondered if the call had been disconnected. Finally, the American president spoke. "How bad is it? What they have on you? Career ending, government falling, legacy destroying. And what you have on me? Worse." Another pause. Then, unexpectedly, Trump laughed. Not a happy laugh, a bitter, resigned laugh. "You know what, Bibi? I'm tired of being held hostage by secrets. I'm tired of making decisions based on what might be revealed rather than what should be done. Use it." Netanyahu couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Donald, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. If you don't use it, you fall. If you do use it, I fall. But here's the thing, I've been preparing for this day since I took office. Every politician with half a brain prepares for the day their secrets come out. The question is, are you prepared for what comes after?" "What comes after?" "That depends on how this call ends." Netanyahu realized he was holding his breath. The next words out of his mouth would determine not just his fate, but the fate of the Israeli-American alliance, the balance of power in the Middle East, and quite possibly the outcome of the next American election. "Donald, what if there was a third option?" "I'm listening." "What if we both came clean? What if we revealed everything ourselves before anyone else could use it against us?" The silence that followed was deafening. Netanyahu could hear Trump breathing, could almost hear the calculations running through the American president's mind. "That's either the most brilliant political move I've ever heard," Trump said slowly, "or the most suicidal." "Which one is it?" "Maybe both." "Explain." "We control the narrative. We choose the timing. We show strength instead of weakness. And most importantly, we do it together. Israel and America, facing the consequences as allies, not as victims of blackmail." Trump was quiet again. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "You realize what you're suggesting? A joint press conference where we essentially end both our careers? Or begin new chapters of them? On what planet does admitting our worst secrets make us stronger? On a planet where people are tired of perfect politicians who never make mistakes? On a planet where authenticity is more valuable than image? That's a hell of a gamble, Bibi." "Everything worth doing is a gamble," Trump was silent for nearly a minute. When he finally spoke, his tone had changed completely. There's something else, isn't there? Something you haven't told me yet? Netanyahu closed his eyes. Trump's political instincts were sharper than anyone gave him credit for. Yes. And the people blackmailing me? They're not who you think they are. Who are they? People in your own government? The line went dead silent. Not the kind of silence that comes from thinking, the kind that comes from shock. Pure, unadulterated shock. Repeat that, Trump said, his voice barely a whisper. The leak didn't come from Israel's enemies. It came from someone in your administration, someone who wants us both gone, who's been planning this for months, someone who has access to both American and Israeli intelligence, and has been using that access to create the perfect political storm. Names. I can't give you names over this line, but I can give you enough information to figure it out yourself. The question is, do you want to know? Of course I want to know. Then we need to meet, in person. Tonight. That's impossible. The logistics alone. Not if we do this right. Not if we turn this crisis into an opportunity. What are you suggesting? An emergency summit. Announced within the hour. You, me, and the media. We tell them we've discovered a plot against both our governments, a conspiracy that threatens the foundation of the Israeli-American alliance. We reveal everything ourselves on our terms, before anyone else can use it against us. That's insane. That's survival. Trump was quiet again. Netanyahu could almost hear the wheels turning in his head, the risk-benefit analysis that every successful politician learned to do in seconds. If we do this, Trump said finally, we need ironclad proof. Not just of the blackmail but of who's behind it. I have proof. How much proof? Enough to bring down 3 people in your cabinet and at least 2 in mine. Jesus. Donald. I need an answer. The sun rises in Jerusalem in 90 minutes. The story breaks whether we're ready or not. And if I say no, then I save myself the only way I can, and you wake up tomorrow to headlines that end your presidency. And if I say yes, then we both wake up tomorrow, as the 2 leaders who had the courage to expose corruption at the highest levels of government, who chose transparency over self-preservation, who proved that real leaders take responsibility for their mistakes. Or we both wake up as former leaders who threw away their careers for a principle. Maybe. But we wake up as friends. The line was quiet for so long that Netanyahu wondered if Trump had hung up. Finally he heard the American president take a deep breath. Okay. Let's do it. But I have conditions. Name them. First, I want to see the proof before we go public. All of it. Agreed. Second, I want guarantees that this doesn't compromise ongoing operations, American or Israeli, already taken care of. Third, I want to know exactly who we're taking down and why. You'll have names, dates, and evidence within the hour. And fourth, Trump paused, I want your word that this is really about doing the right thing, not about saving your political skin. Netanyahu considered lying. It would have been easy, and Trump might never know the difference. But something about the moment, about the gravity of what they were about to do, demanded honesty. Donald. It's about both. I won't lie to you. This saves my career. But it also saves something more important. It saves the trust between our countries. Between us. That's all I needed to hear. So we're doing this? We're doing this. How do you want to handle the logistics? I'm getting on a plane to Washington right now. I'll be there by sunrise. We hold the press conference at noon, Eastern Time. Joint appearance, joint statement, joint revelation. The media will go insane. Let them. By the time they figure out what's really happening, we'll have controlled the narrative. And the political fallout? We'll handle that together, as allies. As friends. As friends. The call ended and Netanyahu sat back in his chair. In 12 hours he would either be hailed as a hero who exposed government corruption, or condemned as a traitor who destroyed the most important alliance in the Middle East. But for the first time in months he felt something he'd almost forgotten, hope. Sarah appeared in the doorway. I heard you make a call. I did. Good call or bad call? Netanyahu looked at his wife, the woman who'd stood by him through every crisis, every scandal, every moment of doubt. I think, he said slowly, it might have been the most important call of my life. Then you made the right choice. We'll see. But as Netanyahu prepared for the most dangerous 12 hours of his political career, he couldn't shake the feeling that this crisis, this moment of desperation that had forced him to choose between loyalty and survival, might actually be exactly what both countries needed. Sometimes the truth, even when it's devastating, is the only thing that can set you free. The plane to Washington was waiting. But as Netanyahu walked toward the aircraft, his secure phone buzzed one final time. The message was from an encrypted number he didn't recognize. "We know you called him. Change of plans." Netanyahu stopped dead in his tracks. How could anyone know about the call so quickly? The line was supposed to be completely secure, monitored only by the most trusted intelligence officers from both countries. Unless the leak was coming from someone with access to those monitoring systems. His mind raced through the possibilities. 3 people had access to transcripts of calls on the red line: his own intelligence chief, the American NSA director, and 1 person from each country's diplomatic security team. 4 total. 4 people who could have known about tonight's conversation within minutes of it ending. Netanyahu climbed the steps to his plane, but instead of taking his usual seat, he went directly to the secure communications room. If someone was monitoring his calls, he needed to know who and how. More importantly, he needed to warn Trump before they landed in Washington. 20 minutes into the flight, Netanyahu had his answer. The breach wasn't coming from Israel's side. Their systems showed no unauthorized access, which meant the leak was in Washington. Someone in Trump's inner circle was feeding information to the blackmailers. Someone who had been there all along, watching, waiting, collecting evidence. Netanyahu picked up the secure satellite phone and dialed Trump's direct line again. This time Trump answered on the first ring. "That was fast," Trump said. "Please tell me you're not calling to back out." "Donald, we have a bigger problem. Someone monitored our call." "That's impossible. This line is..." "I know what this line is supposed to be. But 47 minutes ago, I received a message from someone who knew we'd spoken. Word for word details of our conversation." The silence on Trump's end was different this time. Not thoughtful, worried. "How specific were the details?" "They knew about your conditions. They knew about the joint press conference. They knew you said yes." "Son of a bitch." Trump's voice was tight with anger. "Any idea who?" "Someone with NSA-level access to your secure communications. Someone who's been in position to monitor diplomatic calls for months, maybe years. That narrows it down to about 6 people." "Donald, there's something else. The original blackmail threat, I think it was designed to force exactly this conversation. Someone wanted us to talk tonight, wanted us to plan this joint revelation. They're not trying to stop us, they're trying to control us." "Control us how?" "Think about it. What happens when 2 world leaders simultaneously admit to career-ending scandals? What happens to the power vacuum that creates?" Trump was quiet for nearly 30 seconds. When he spoke, his voice was grim. "Someone's been playing a much longer game than we realized. The question is, do we still go through with the press conference, knowing it's exactly what they want, or do we find another way? What other way is there? The stories break in 6 hours either way. We could expose the conspiracy first. Make it about them, not about us." "With what proof?" "I'm sending you a file right now. Everything I have on who's been accessing our communications, when and how. It's enough to shift the entire narrative." Netanyahu's aide appeared in the doorway of the communications room, holding a tablet. On the screen was a secure message from Trump. "File received." "Jesus Christ, Bibi. Do you realize what this means? It means the people we've been trusting to protect our secrets have been the ones selling them. It means this goes deeper than just blackmail. This is about regime change." In both countries, Netanyahu felt a chill that had nothing to do with the aircraft's air conditioning. Trump was right. This wasn't just about exposing 2 leaders' secrets. This was about removing 2 leaders who had proven difficult to control, replacing them with more compliant alternatives. "Donald, we need to change the plan." "I'm listening." "Instead of confessing our secrets, we expose theirs. Instead of a joint press conference about our mistakes, we hold a joint press conference about their conspiracy." That's a hell of a pivot. That's survival. What about the original blackmail material? The stuff they have on both of us? We still reveal it, but we frame it differently. We don't present it as shameful secrets. We present it as the weapons they've been using against us. We own our mistakes, but we make it clear that the real crime isn't what we did wrong. It's how our own people have been manipulating us. Trump was quiet again. Netanyahu could almost hear him thinking through the political implications. "You know what this means?" Trump said finally. "If we're right about this conspiracy, if we can prove it, we don't just save our careers, we become the leaders who exposed the deep state. Or the leaders who went down swinging with the most spectacular conspiracy theory in political history. Either way, it's better than going down as the leaders who were brought down by blackmail." Agreed. So we're still doing this? We're doing this. But with one change, we're not just saving ourselves, we're saving democracy. As Netanyahu's plane crossed into international airspace, he realized that the 3 a.m. phone call that had started this crisis might actually end up being remembered as the moment two unlikely allies decided to fight back against the forces forcing to control them. The sun was rising over the Atlantic. In Washington, preparations for the most important press conference in modern political history were already underway. But now, instead of confessing their sins, two world leaders were about to declare war on the people who had been pulling their strings all along.